So I wanted to analyze, can Vince really legitimately start a new company with all that's gone on with him in the last few years? I brought in friend of the show, John Phillips. John's a Florida-based attorney here in Jacksonville, where we're at, done a lot of high-profile criminal cases. He's done entertainment law and represented entertainers. Back in the day, he was a sports agent, so he kind of knows everything that's happening here. He understands this world. So I brought him in to help break down what is going on with Vince McMahon. Can he realistically start a new company? Here is criminal and entertainment lawyer, John Phillips.
Well, we're joined now by John Phillips, an attorney down here in Florida who's handled, a lot of like entertainment, sports, and criminal cases. John, thank you for joining us on the show today.
My pleasure, Scott.
Well, let me start with the legal aspect, because that's the most important. So DOJ, according to McMahon's lawyers, have dropped any investigation. He paid the SEC, but he still has this civil case, which is massive. This ex-employee who alleges things like sex trafficking, that's still on the table. John, I want to ask, because Vince McMahon showed up at the Super Bowl. On video, people saw him. That's as high profile as it gets, where Vince McMahon has essentially been hidden for a year and a half. We haven't seen or heard from him. Anything we can infer there, the fact that he's maybe starting to come out of his shell?
We're in strange times, Scott, as everybody knows, and what's stranger than Linda McMahon becoming head of the Department of Education. So it just goes to show, and we know that Vince has been longtime friends with Trump, and maybe they're a little estranged themselves these days. But there's that whole group that kind of came up together. It seems to be coming back into power, despite, I think, his age of 79. And to go back to your question, you got to look at all of the smoke that's around him. The Janelle Grant lawsuit. There's still, I think, the Ring Boys lawsuit. The SEC issue he pled no contest to and resolved, but there could be secondary issues that arise from there. But yeah, it appears, and some of the rumors going around the wrestling world are that Vince McMahon's back and looking to get back into the business in some way.
Do you think after the DOJ dropped his suit, he's probably talking to his lawyers nonstop? Do you think they maybe feel confident going into their civil suit, which is, still hanging out there?
Yeah, I think that's right. Success breeds confidence, whether in wrestling or in litigation. I know we do it around here. We get a big win. We get a little full of ourselves. But, it's those two spheres are different to me, too. Beating a government entity, kind of, resolving it to the point of a no contest plea and a payment or settlement, certainly is one thing. But these mounting allegations and lawsuits that we're hearing, whether it be a football player or Diddy or, some of the Hollywood elite that are getting trapped up into these, he's got, a real lawsuit that really gets into some of the sexual improprieties that nobody wants to be.
I want to ask you about settling, because a lot of people since it started have wondered if he will be able to settle. I've talked to the accuser's lawyers and they say, nope, we're not going to settle. We're going to go all the way with this. Talk to me about settling. Is settling a real thing in cases like these? Do they find a way, particularly the accused, to get this to go away?
Yeah, you got to look at the lawyer matchup on some of this. It's almost like sizing up a wrestling match. What is the lawyer's gain? There's been some lawyers that bring these cases that use one case to get more cases, and then have this big, massive situation that either has to go to trial or ultimately some sort of settlement. There could be a confidential settlement. Part of the issue of him getting into trouble involved using NDAs a bit too strictly, and NDAs are not allowed when you're talking about illegal conduct, sex trafficking, sexual exploitation, even sexual harassment to some extent. I think if he's going to make the rise, he's going to need, some assistance from the DOJ and some security, knowing that he's kind of in this new protected world, right? With high profile peers, and also his lawyers saying, okay, you're not going to get thrown in jail, so go do your thing. We're going to make sure your bond conditions are okay, and you're not going to get brought in for a trial. Smoke, even trying to catch up this morning on everything that was going on. It's a wild world around Vince McMahon, as it always has been.
I want to talk to you about now we're moving into something next level where there is talk and buzz about him starting some sort of new entertainment company. I don't know the motivation is to compete with his old company or just to do something. No one really knows. Let's start with the legal aspect of that. If he's the face of the company, he's got a damaged brand. Can that still be pulled off?
I think it can in 2025 America. That some would say that Trump had a damaged brand. Some would say that the Tates have a damaged brand. Some would say, some people in Hollywood have a damaged brand. Somewhere, some way, there's somebody listening still to Diddy. And his don't arise to some of that level. And Vince McMahon has this unique role in American culture where nobody's taken him fully seriously, because he's been such a showman and a character, almost a caricature of himself. But also he has brought, a business from floor to ceiling and blown past the ceiling. And how could he not want some of that back? And the question is, in what role?
So there was talk, and it's been buzz, and no one really knows the accuracy. Maybe he'd get a deal with Fox Network. And then I've seen some reporting that the Fox deal won't work out. At a high level business entertainment, you're going to deal with two things. You're going to deal with networks who may not want to touch him because of the brand damage. But at the same time, he's a billionaire, and, they can find ways to get, media entities interested.
Yeah, he's a connected billionaire too. He's again, his wife sits at the hand of, or I know there's some estrangement there, but
sure.
There's still direct connectivity to the president of the United States, Elon Musk, whoever they need, and all of them, all of that group that's kind of there at the top, all is a little bit mad at the litigation process, whether it be criminal or civil, and have all been through the ringer. And strongly presented a case that they're all innocent and this is all, unnecessary smoke because there was never a fire. His issues are a bit more complicated, but I don't think he's going to have a problem getting powerful show business type people to give him enough forgiveness if he has a business plan that's going to take them all to the top.
I want to put your sports agent hat because you've also done sports agent work. So I've heard from ex-WWE stars, and we had one on the show who said, hey, if Vince starts a new company, I'd love to work for him. These wrestlers are independent contractors, and I don't even know if there's a wrestling company or some sort of entertainment company. I don't know. But as far as dealing with contracts and stealing away talent, who may be under contract or non-compete, is that hard at his end, or can he find a way to do that? He's done this before.
He's done it before. I think, the invention of Tony Khan and that type of wrestling executive into the world, they've brought a lot more legal acumen into it. AEW has a team of lawyers that you'll hear from pretty quickly, who are sometimes more stout than John Cena ever was. Mm-hmm. But it's I don't know. There's so much more competition at the high end, and back in my day, I hate to say that, but there were a lot of little wrestling companies, but then they just kind of got munched up, and Vince McMahon did what he did. And there's only so many networks, but there's streaming services. And so if he had a partnership with Apple or Netflix or somebody else that could come in and say, all right, we'll help with this. It's not outside the realm of possibility, maybe even probability.
And could you see possibly him? I mean, because his competition is his ex-employee and Tony Khan. I mean, those are the real competitors, and both have deep pockets. But Vince McMahon has deep pockets too, and whoever he partners with. I mean, are bidding wars a thing when you get to this level for a certain talent? Because he'd want to bring in big names.
I think they are, and so you've got these rolling contracts and contracts with some level of exclusivity, but we've seen those broken over the years. There's a lot of people that still strongly feel they never would have made it in this world but for Vince McMahon, and those folks that are that loyal, will flock towards him, and that there's going to be money surrounding it. And I think there's a way he could enter at 79 years old as a altered business model and be tremendously successful. I don't know that touring the country with a show with the amount of competition he has is necessarily the tractor trailer I would want to run into, but there's plenty of alternatives, and he knows the industry from every perspective.
And final question, I want to get your opinion on his lawyers. So in general, I would think lawyers would say, shut up, don't do anything, fade into the background like a good, normal client. He is not a good, normal client. He's a guy who had a lot of high profile. He's been as high profile as it gets for 40 years. And he's been through the ringer. I mean, as a lawyer, what's it like to deal with the more client who is just unlike any other client you've ever had? Does that make it difficult for his lawyers?
It's crazy. I've represented Joe Exotic and Omarosa. Okay. And you have to factor in the personality. And I learned a lot from Omarosa. I learned a lot from Joe, because you got to, when you're in a room with somebody that's dominated it for so long, that, you got to listen to them as an expert. And Vince McMahon, just like Omarosa, knows media, knows how to control a room. Vince in a whole different league. And
is that as much,
he did.
Well, I want to interrupt. So when I think of law, I think this is our defense and we're going to do this, this, and this, and this. But I'm assuming with someone like him, media strategy is as much a part of it. Is that not the case, even for lawyers?
Yeah, it becomes natural. You think in terms of criminal litigation, civil litigation, court of public opinion, right? And so you have to, he has to have media savvy lawyers around him, and he has been pretty quiet for a while. And so I think the resurrection of Vince McMahon, as he's entering his 80s, I think is something that he doesn't want his last show to be failure and to be, controversy. I think he's going to try to ride one out into the horizon, the old Vince way.
Well, John Phillips, criminal entertainment, sports lawyer, all down here in Florida. John, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Thank you, Scott.